Good evening again. If you don't mind, I'm just going to drone on for a bit about Christmassy related things, garlands, lights, candles. It seems appropriate. But first, and if I may, can I ask you a question? Are you coping? You know, with all this stuff of life, are you coping? And if you are, can I ask, how are you coping? How are you doing that? How are you dealing with it all? With the good, and the bad, and the unrest, and the uncertainty, the Christmas. The fact that whilst it's been good to see a dip in their form, it really would be a lot better if Man City had already been relegated down to Division 3. You know I'm right. In general, I'm finding it a lot harder to keep up. As I get older, I'm 22, the world seems to just move faster and faster, and I'm not certain what I'm meant to think about anything anymore. Up turns out to be down, and left turns out to be right, and hot is cold. Am I having a brat summer or a demure autumn? Or whatever the next collective vibe is. And of all the hairstyles to make a comeback, the mullet is back. And don't get me started on podcasts. Can we just agree that we now have enough and we don't need any more? The rest is history. The rest is politics, the rest is money. Just give it a rest. I have a friend who is an avid listener to a football podcast. Sounds normal enough? It's not. Not content with just hearing pundits speak about last week's games, the host of this show discussed the results of their fantasy league teams. And they give advice to tens of thousands of others who select their teams based on what they say for the upcoming week. What the actual fantasy league? Content creators. What even is a content creator? What is this amorphous term that just applies to anything that anybody wants? Fantasy football podcasts, content creators. 14-year-old girl making TikTok videos of her baking, content creator. Balding 50-year-old man with an OnlyFans of his feet, content creator. You're overthinking it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. But honestly, I don't know what to think about anything anymore. All the while, TikTok is telling me that there is a secret to happiness. Do you want to hear it? It's this. Delulu is the Salulu. Or in English, delusion is the solution. Now, once upon a time, let's call it 6 months ago, I knew exactly where I stood with delusion. I felt like we as a species had nailed that down. There was once a universal agreement that deluding yourself was in fact a bad thing. We should pity the delusional, right? Yes, in my secret moments, I might say to myself that I could have played tennis professionally if it weren't for my bad knee. I don't actually have a bad knee, it's just a thing people in their mid-30s say. Or I might tell myself that I am a better husband because of the hundreds of hours I've spent studying relationship dynamics, watching Married at First Sight. Listen, knowing what not to do is as important as knowing what to do. That's my masterclass. But I probably shouldn't tell anyone, especially a packed-out church at Christmas, because you'd think, wow, he really is delusional. We should pity him. But things have changed. And so this Christmas, may all your delulu come true, Lulu. Because delulu is the salulu. And to be clear, delulu, for the uninitiated, by which I mean my millennial friends, not simply is delulu just good, old-fashioned self-belief. It's way more stupid than that. It is limitless. It's having confidence beyond your abilities. It's not just dancing like no one's watching, but it's dancing like no one's watching and believing that unobserved dancing will land you a modeling career, or a book contract, or a film franchise, end world hunger, and solve the climate crisis. Delulu is quite literally giving delusion. This is how the kids are coping. How about you? And if I may get serious for a moment, I think the whole trend points to something deeper. A question about how we cope with life. Why do people pretend? Sometimes it's often because they don't like who they are, but I think more often it's because people don't know who they are. And so pretending becomes a way of coping when reality feels just too heavy, too confusing to face. And perhaps, just perhaps, this isn't only something experienced by the younger generations. In 21st century London, we're living in what you could call a crisis of identity. In our social media-driven world, identity has been reduced to very narrow, oversimplified labels. I am my sexuality. I am my career. I am my anxiety. I am my righteous anger. But when we define ourselves so narrowly, we can't help but feel incomplete. Huge parts of who we are gets left out. And of course, your gender, your sexuality, your race, these are absolutely vital parts of who you are. But you and I are far more than any one of these or even all of them combined. And as anyone who has tried will attest, trying to define who we are, it seems liberating at first, but it comes with this crippling pressure to get it right. And what's interesting is that all the research shows that actually the more we think about ourselves, the more miserable we become. How are you coping? Now, it's unfair to say that everyone has brought into Delulu, or even the general sense of self-absorption that seems to underpin it. As one 17-year-old on the internet said, for every teenager manifesting their Delulu boss babe hustle girl grind set, there are 20 banging their heads against the wall, begging for the destruction of capitalism. Now, I'm not going to extol the rights or wrongs about capitalism, not least because I don't understand it. But nevertheless, what that 17-year-old on the internet does represent is the other side of the coin. Most people know that deluding themselves, probably not the answer. And I think most of us have come to realize that screaming at the internet isn't either. So some have recognized the limits of self-absorption, and they're looking for something far bigger. They want to rise above the chaos and find purpose and make a difference. And I think that this instinct is very good. It's a rejection of shallow coping in favor of something meaningful. People who think less about themselves, not less of themselves, are actually statistically kinder, less anxious, and more happy people. But I think we know that even this has its limits. Any solution that depends entirely on you get it together, you do it, you be selfless, will eventually lead in one of two places: self-hatred or self-importance. Self-hatred when you fail, and self-importance when you succeed. Why? Because it's just all about you. But mainly, I don't believe that this is the solution because of Christmas. Because Christmas is God's solution. So a world searching for meaning, deluding itself, telling itself just to try much, much harder. Those in darkness, leading those in darkness, a light has come. Now, beyond Delulu, we valiantly continue to look for ways to cope in search of our true self and purpose. Celebrities have their crystals, podcasters repeat their affirmations, influencers manifest whatever they're peddling, and as church attendance declines, searches on Google rise astronomically every year. Among the ever-increasing number of self-described, spiritually open, non-religious people in our culture, there appears to be a longing sense that there is just some goodness, some positivity, some life to be found in this world. Surely there are good vibes. Surely there's a hum, an energy, a hidden mysterious power at the heart of everything that's bigger and stronger and outside of ourselves. If only we could find a way to tap into that, maybe, just maybe, that could help. And Christmas Christmas emphatically says, yes, you're right to think this. There is something bigger. And it announces joy to the world. The Lord has come. This is why we sing. Because the same life-giving, all-powerful source that created, animates, and sustains this world has put on flesh and moved into the neighborhood. Not an impersonal force, not exclusively for the elite or those with a special knowledge of how to access it. Not the universe, bigger. The one who spoke the universe into being, like a skyscraper trying to cram itself into a thimble. The pre-existent word, the creator of everything, enters a broken and uncertain world that he loves and takes on eyelids and fingers and a tiny, fragile, beating heart, and is born in a stinking stable in the arms of a teenager. The infinite become intimate. The powerful become personal. Now, I like Christmas traditions as much as the next guy. Both my children were extremely cute, albeit reluctant, nativity animals this morning. But I've got to be honest, not really into the baby Jesus all that much. Baby Schmaybe. I'm really interested in the God-man that God baby grew into, because Jesus is utterly magnificent. And he makes extraordinary claims about himself and his ability to bring ultimate meaning and purpose to our lives. One historian said, regardless of what anyone may personally think or believe about him, Jesus of Nazareth has been the dominant figure in the history of the world for almost 20 centuries. Another writer calls Jesus the man who will not go away. Normally when somebody dies, their impact on the world immediately begins to recede, but Jesus inverted this normal human tendency, as he did so many others. Albert Einstein, who described himself as an agnostic, nevertheless said this, I am a Jew, but I am enthralled by the luminous figure of the Nazarene. Jesus is too colossal for the pen of phrasemongers. No one can read the Gospels without feeling the actual presence of Jesus. His personality pulsates every word. No myth is filled with such life. Has there ever been anyone in history quite like Jesus of Nazareth? Divine and driven but not detached, gentle but not weak, self-confident but not self-related, free but not feckless, powerful but not oppressive, kind. I never knew a kinder man but not codependent, a leader but not a dictator, and a servant but not a submissive. And in contrast to our own confusion around our identity and purpose, Jesus spoke with unwavering assurance about who he is and what he's here to do and what he has on offer, and that he's God in the flesh. Jesus says this, I am the bread of life. I want to deliver you from that gnawing existential hunger for meaning and for more. Jesus says, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Jesus says, I am the door to those who've been excluded, rejected, shut out, those who feel like they're just not wanted. I will let you in. You'll have access through me. Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. To those who feel powerless and lost, shepherded by algorithms that promise temporary happiness, I will guide you to places that truly fulfill. Jesus says, come to me, all you who are weary, and I will give you rest for your soul. The soul, it's a bit of a mystery, isn't it? Did you know that the Greek word for soul, psyche, is where we get our word psychology? Originally, psychology wasn't about diagnosing behaviors or mapping brain chemistry. It's about healing the soul. But who really believes in the soul anymore? Or at least who's clear about it? We're sort of fuzzy about its existence. But really, what makes you, you? The sum total of you, your identity, your essential being. Are you just a meat suit? Animated by brain synapses and a bit of static energy, or is there something truer within? Even if we can't fully articulate it, we know there's something more than flesh and blood. We feel it, we sense it, we see it and sense it in other people around us, that there's a truer part of us, something deeper beyond the surface. Soul. just makes things better, doesn't it? Let me prove it to you. Do you want to listen to music, or do you want to listen to soul music? Isn't that better? Richer, more alive? Do you want to eat food, or eat soul food? It's not just sustenance. It's comfort. It's history. It's belonging. Do you want to go to a spin class? Do you want to go to soul cycle? That one doesn't work. That doesn't work. Forget that. There is a true part of what makes us us. And we live in a world where you have a soul and no one really cares about it. No wonder we're desperately deluding ourselves. No wonder we're trying harder, finding more innovative ways to cope. No wonder we're
exhausted, physically exhausted, mentally exhausted, digitally exhausted, existentially exhausted, exhausted by the injustice of the world. Some of you are very young, have a very old soul. Who is going to care for the deepest and truest part of you? Jesus says if you're weary, you're tired, you feel like someone's being neglected upon you, I will give rest. And to our search for identity, who am I, what am I for, how can I be happy in this world, but I just seem to understand less and less. Christmas says, you are so important that God took on flesh and moved into you, making his home amongst us in all of our self-related nonsense, just refusing to disappear off the shadow. As the history expands, it's kind of impossible to kill. He's the man who won't go away. Peter tried. He just keeps reading, directly, not forcing himself upon anyone, but just quietly and passively. And that rather than the onus being on us to find our purpose, rather than it down to us and our own willpower to bring about our integrated true selves, Jesus says, you want purpose, keep your purpose beyond your wildest dreams. You want to know who you are? I know who you are. I made you, and everything I made is wonderful, glorious. And what if it didn't actually have to purpose at all? What if everything was actually on him, with God of the universe, and not you? What if he could cope for you? Where he would take all your hopes and fears, all your worries and all your stresses and load them onto his shoulders. People sometimes say, oh, Christianity, such a crutch, isn't it? You can't survive, can you? You can't cook without the little Jesus crutch and hobbling along. When I hear people say this, my answer is, yes. I can't tell you. Can you? Because if you can't, Jesus will take all your pain, all your breakings, and he will hold you in his hands and he will say, I love you, I'll make you new, I will lift you where you feel weak, you matter so much to me, let me show you my purpose for your life. Who are you? What are you for? You can search the rest of your life trying to find answers to these questions. We didn't waste years pretending to be someone we know we aren't. But Jesus just stands at the door of every heart we knocks. He says, I'm here. Allow me. This is the Samuel. To be one with him and to be made glorious, so that we do not need to live in darkness, searching for meaning anymore, because the light has come. The let can shine. Amen.